Well, let's move out to Hollywood, LA. We got the UCLA Bruins. Some real optimism around this program now for the first time in a while. And I think that all has to do with Bob Chesney, good young coach coming over from James Madison. We talked about it in the Big 12 preview, but kind of a similar situation, not quite as extreme, but this is kind of going to be like a James Madison West, if you will, kind of like Oklahoma State has become North Texas North. So I think UCLA, we'll see how these James Madison transfers translate to a full Big 10 schedule. We saw it work with Signetti, certainly. So it's not impossible that you add some of the top end talent from a James Madison into a Big 10 program that you could find lightning in a bottle. Like I'm not predicting UCLA to kind of replicate what Indiana did in terms of year one or year two success, obviously. But I do think that going from 2-3 wins is, I think, what they had last year to getting to the over on their over-under number this year, which is 6.5. Could they compete to get to that 6.5 number? Yeah, I think they certainly could. You've got the James Madison transfers coming in. They should supplement the roster. You still got some key pieces from last year's team, namely Nico Iamaleava, who is the former Tennessee quarterback, who I think performed okay last year, given the circumstances and the roster and the coaching staff that he had around him. Had a great game against Penn State when UCLA took down Penn State, I believe is like 24-point underdogs the week after Penn State lost to Oregon. So that was really the beginning of the end for James Franklin when they went out and couldn't get the job done against this UCLA Bruins team. But I think we will see a much improved, much more competitive UCLA team. I think that 6.5 is probably the right number. I'm going to look up their schedule real quick. I think they've got, pretty winnable out of conference schedule. They do open the season with a pretty interesting game. I think that's the late night game in week 1, that Saturday night. They go on the road to play Cal. So pretty good quarterback matchup there between KJS and Nico. And then they get San Diego State at home and they get Nevada at home, kind of middle of the season. But looking ahead at their schedule, I don't believe that this is the most difficult Big Ten schedule you're ever going to find. They do have to play at Oregon and they do have to play at Michigan, but the rest of their tougher games in conference are at home, including USC at the end of the year. And then they play quite a few of the kind of bottom to middle tier teams in the Big Ten. So I think 6.5 is doable. I think this team could be 7-5, could get even sneak to 8-4 if they can upset a USC or Michigan or an Oregon. But to get to that over, I think they probably got to beat Cal in week 1, and then you're set up to hit it, winning the games you're supposed to the rest of the season. But would be interested to see what you guys think about UCLA. Ryan, I'll go to you here first. What do you make of the Bruins and then the Bob Chesney era out in LA?
I think you gave a pretty good overview of the outlook of this season. I will say I listened to Bob Chesney on Part of My Take last week. I really like him. He's the type of guy you need in LA. You can't have a dick like Chip Kelly. You need a guy with some energy, a young guy.
He's charismatic.
Yeah, he really is. He seems like he's a true football guy, but he's not like a blockhead in your face, like that type of coach. He seems like he has the ability to really relate to guys. At least he sold it that way. So I came away listening to that interview being like, really wanting to buy stock in UCLA long term. I don't have a super strong opinion on how quickly the turnaround will be. I actually think the opposite side of UKC. I think Cal, San Diego State, and Nevada is kind of a tough out-of-conference schedule. I do think their Big Ten schedule is a little easier, but I think those 3 teams, you compare those to some of the out-of-conference schedules the Big Ten teams are playing, I think those are kind of 3 tricky matchups. But overall, I'm going over. I'm buying in on Chesney and UCLA, and I think it might come down to the best uniform matchup in sports, the UCLA USC game, the last game of the year, and I got my money on UCLA.
It is one of the best matchups there is in terms of when UCLA wears the blue, when USC wears the red, and they both kind of go color schemes. It's one of the coolest uniform matchups you'll see on the field all year for sure. Marsh, do you like UCLA and what they've got to work with in year one of the Chesney era?
I'm going oppo, you boys. I've been agreeing with Ryan all night. It's time to disagree here. I love Bob Chesney, don't get me wrong. I love his cousin Kenny as well and some of the albums he's put out. But I think when it comes to Nico, I'm just a hard out on Nico. I've seen enough, honestly. I mean, I do like them bringing over Wayne Knight from JMU. That guy was a beast. He just ran all over the place last year, caught the ball well, too. I think he was averaging 6.5 a clip running the ball. So I'd like to see what he does in the Big Ten. This is obviously big boy football and not JMU's conference, but I don't know. I like Bob Chesney a lot. I like what they're doing. I like him as a fit, like you said, Nard, as far as at UCLA and what you need in Los Angeles and Hollywood. Nico, to me, isn't the guy. He has done nothing to prove he's the guy. He's had every opportunity under the sun the last 2 years. Injuries, inconsistencies. He's not putting up the star production that everyone expected of him. I mean, when he was coming out as a recruit, it was one of the bigger recruits we'd seen in a while, from what I can remember. So I like what Bob's doing. I like this team long term. I think 2026 outlook, I'm out on the Bruins. I think Bob Chesney is going to be hanging out with his cousin Kenny. And when the sun goes down, it's just going to be them and tequila.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, I mean, look, it's still weird to talk about UCLA as a Big Ten team. They're the most kind of, with the uniforms and the Rose Bowl, it's just they're the most West Coast team I think you can possibly imagine when you think about West Coast football. But they're in the Big Ten, they're in the Rust Belt Conference now, so that's where we're at. And I think it's time to make our way back to the Rust Belt.